Welcome to the Decode Podcast with Elias Malfovan, Daniel Stanfill, and Sean Kincaid.
Welcome to the Decode. We are live with Adrian Leal. He is the Business Development Manager at Teltonica EMS, Ambassador for Cup of Joey, something we'll talk about. President of the Gulf Coast chapter of SMTA. He is a PCBA subject matter expert. I think everyone would agree on that. Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Ever heard of it? 25 years in PCB fab. So that's at least a little bit of time. So Adrian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Do you mind just kind of filling us in on how you found our lovely industry?
Yeah, so my dad, a junior high dropout, started working for GE, General Electric, fixing toasters and TVs, and we used to go outside and pop the old tubes on the driveway and watch them go boom, and kind of got the electronics bug from him. And by the time I was in college, he was in charge of all the X-ray installations for General Electric in the southern portion of Texas, from El Paso through San Antonio to Beaumont, and kind of saw that, hey, he made a pretty good living. And out of school, and I majored in electronic engineering, electronic technology, and 3 or 4 years after school, I got into manufacturing and been doing it ever since.
Wow, major in electronics. I wasn't expecting that, because when I talk to you, you're very down to earth, and when I talk to Elias and he doesn't have anything near that degree, he always tries to use really big words and try to sound fancy, you know.
Dude, people ask me, do I speak Spanish? And I think, no, I barely speak English, so I 1 or 2 syllable words are good for me.
There you go. I'm the same way. If it's more than 5 words in an email, I'm not reading it. So I learned the other day, too long didn't read the TLDR, and now I like to use it
all he types now.
Too long.
And it's almost too long of an acronym for him to use, even.
He's trying to find a way to abbreviate it more.
Yeah.
But I guess that leads me to the question I wanted to ask you. You know, I mean, you've been in this business almost as long as I've been born, right? And I'm no spring chicken by any means. You know, if you were able to give like one piece of advice to anyone in the electronics industry, whether they're starting out or where I'm at today, what would that be? What would you say to them?
That's a good question. I thinking about my career and the highs and lows, one of the things that I tried to do was to never stop learning, you know. And one of my in every company that I've worked for, I always try to find somebody who can be a mentor or an advisor, somebody who's been around the block. And so I was at Schlumberger, which is now called SLB. I was there for 13 years, and one of the gentlemen that interviewed me, I consider him my mentor. And even though he's retired and he's gotten on in years, and unfortunately he's starting to have some memory loss, this guy. So do you remember when the industry first went lead free, right? And it was all, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, in the downhole drilling industry, we were lead free, not because of the environmental, but because of the melting point parameters of lead free. It was higher than eutectic solder. And so this guy, Rick Etchels, and you'll see him comment on some of my LinkedIn stuff, he and another guy came up with a process to use lead free solder on our circuit boards because of the higher melting point. It was 221 to 18C. That would allow the board to survive in the downhole environment. So I've always tried to do that. Try to find somebody that you know, what they say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I always try to find somebody who's not just book smart, but been around the block and has had, you know, successes and failures, and just ask them questions. And so I'm now into the point in my life where I like to pay it forward, so to speak. So if somebody's asked me questions about, you know, circuit board technology, especially for, you know, down here being in Houston, especially for the oil and gas industry, you know, I say, hey, look, don't reinvent the wheel. Go talk to so-and-so, or go look at this technology, or go look at this process. Back then, funny story, I was at one of the SMTA, maybe it was SMTAI years ago. I was attending a class, and I can't remember who was teaching the class, and lead free had just come out. It had just, you know, Rojas just came out, And so the guy teaching the class goes, well, how many of you guys are lead free? And everybody's raising their hand. And how many don't have any problems? And my hand, and everybody kept looking like, why is his hand still up? And he's like, you don't have any problems? And he goes like, no. He goes, well, how long have you been doing lead free? I said, well, we've been doing, probably about 10 years. He goes, really? Why? I said, well, we're downhole. We need the higher temperature. He's like, oh. He kind of stopped. He says, so what do you do, with the melting point? How do you control that? I said, well, we came up with our own plating for on the PCB. And he's like, okay. And he goes, well, what do you do, with the components? Because the component leads, the SMT at that time still had lead on it. I said, well, we have a re-tinning process. And what about popcorning? I said, well, we do some pre-bake. What do you do for reflow? That we do, vapor phase. Hold on a minute. So start writing some notes down. Okay, let's go on to class. Okay, before we get started, any more questions? People start raising their hand. He goes, yeah. He goes, can you talk about vapor phase? He's like, no, I wish it's not. We don't have time to talk about vapor phase. Because back then, the ovens, they weren't, they didn't have nitrogen purge. You might have a 10 zone, but the control wasn't really good. And so for lead free, of course, you need all that stuff. So yeah, so I always look for somebody who's smarter than me, and I ask the dumb questions.
I'm really
That
good
kind
at
of,
asking dumb questions.
yeah, that's all you know how to do.
Really good.
Kind of segues well into the question I had for you, Adrian, because looking at your profile, I can tell that, networking is really important to you, seeing that you're the president of the SMTA chapter in your area, and then also involved in Cup of Joey and some of those networking events. I'm curious why networking is so important to you, and, kind of what advice you'd have for people who might be on the sidelines, seeing some of these events happen, seeing people
Yeah.
get together, but maybe are a little hesitant to get involved.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, Elias, because at some of the networking events that I attend, there are actually, introvert people that are there. And so, and I get that it's very hard for you to step out, and I'm very extroverted, and, I'm a dork. So I embrace it. Like, they're going to laugh at me. So I might as well just go out there and get it over with, so, but for those the reason why I network, personally, is just the main reason why is that, besides I like to be around people, I think we are called upon. I think all of us are born with gifts and talents, and I think it's like a kid at Christmas time. You get a gift, you don't leave it on the tree. You open it, you use it, you might share it. So the way I see it, well, if I got this gift or this talent to help people connect, then I should use it and share it. And the funny thing is, the more you share, the more you get. Down here in Houston, especially during COVID, we were shut down. Couldn't, especially for people in sales. How can I was a manufacturing rep, and my boss at the time says, well, it's gonna be kind of rough. I'm like, well, no, it's not gonna be rough. I says, why? We can't go knock on doors. I said, well, we have a virtual, doorway right here on LinkedIn. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, dude, this is where everybody's going. People are going to be on social media for however long it takes. He goes, well, I have no idea how to do this. He goes, do you? I said, no, I don't know. I said, but I'll find out. So, I crashed my LinkedIn daily, and it took a while, and then started, making some connections. And I can honestly say the last two jobs and that I have had was because of my network, and my presence on social media. I'm not going to post a picture of what I had for dinner or show you my cat. That's not, I mean, I don't do Facebook and I don't do Instagram, but LinkedIn is my social media platform of choice. And if you want to network and you want to do it right, you have to show up in person. And whether you're introverted or extroverted, you can show up. And if you're at the right event, like at Cup of Joey, you'll make connections, and then you can bolster those connections through LinkedIn. So, during COVID, I think I don't know, I had less than 1,000, maybe less than 500 followers, but I started connecting on people on LinkedIn during COVID. And then once we came out of it, I started hitting the network events, and, and then it just blew up, and now here in the Houston area, we have several shared workspaces. We have some hubs, for different industries. And I'll just tell you, I am known as the manufacturer Yoda. I get requests for stuff all the time, But he's like, oh, manufacturing? Go talk to Adrian. Next thing I know, something pops up on LinkedIn and I have a question. I'm like, no, dude, I don't do that stuff. Well, everybody says, I said, well, I know people. I said, when you're old as shit, and you live in the same city, yeah, you're going to know people. So, I'll get them to the right person. And ironically, even though I send people away, I will get people come back to me. And,
Yeah,
so I think
we're
it's
all
just,
we're huge
but
LinkedIn fans. I mean, it's really kind of how this whole thing came to be. We all met each other on LinkedIn. The majority of our guests are folks that we've connected with in LinkedIn. And I think personally, you mentioned, kind of in-person networking. And I think the two play well together. For me personally, I've found so much more value and so much more enrichment in these in-person events when they're folks I'm meeting and seeing for the first time, but have had some interactions with on LinkedIn. It's not like that kind of cold intro. Like, you both know a little bit
right.
about each other from seeing or discussing things on LinkedIn. So I think the two play really well together.
I totally agree. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing just to be online and then it's one thing to be in person. But like you said, if you marry those two activities together, then those relationships that you create become real. It's not just, oh, I'm not a friend on Facebook or whatever. And so, I can say that a lot of the people that I'm connected on LinkedIn, I make an effort to meet them in person, and I make an effort to connect with them on LinkedIn. And so, and because of that, just like, a network, that first person I connect with may not be the one who needs my services, but they'll know somebody. And so, and then what's really beneficial for me down here in Houston. So Houston is the largest metropolitan city in the country with the most diverse population. And so because of we have four pillars. We have shipping, we have medical, we have the largest medical center in the country, of course, oil and gas and aerospace. And so these four industries traditionally in the past would be pillars or not pillars, but silos. And now I think everybody learned their lessons and now you'll see you'll see these industries interact and everybody wins. Matter of fact, I was just looking at this earlier. So check this out. This is you can see that. It's an
Pumps and
organization,
pipes.
Pumps and Pipes. So a the story is a drilling engineer was sitting next to a cardiovascular surgeon on an airplane, and they just started a conversation, and then they realized the same basic technology used to pump blood through the body with the same technology to pump oil and gas from the ground. So they started this thing called Pumps and Pipes. And so now every year we have this event where people from those both industries get together and share successes and share roadblocks. And then now this year will be the first year that we're inviting the aerospace technology people down here. So there's a lot of interaction that happens, and that wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't network.
I thought you were gonna go with another P there for a second. Honestly, Adrian, like one of my favorite posts you've done, and you've done a lot of them, but I don't know, it's the one that I like connected with you with because I could just see you're like a real human person, like almost like I could see your personality coming through the photo, and you probably have no clue which one I'm gonna say, but it's the one where you were riding that dinosaur at that trade show. Do you guys
That was
remember that
last
one?
year.
Do you guys
Yeah.
remember that one? Yeah, it was
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
that was almost a year ago. Yeah.
the way you had your hand waving like this with it
Yeah.
too. Like it was like it was just, and I was like, man, what a great trade show idea! They have that at people stopping by and that company's banner. I'm sure you've seen it all, but yeah, I don't know.
And
It's
the
just
thing is that dinosaur is animatronic, and so it's growling at you and it's moving around.
really
And so when people get on it, you hear that noise vibrate through the entire trade shows. Whoever, like, I don't remember what company was it, but
no clue.
every time I see them, I go and take a picture on their dinosaur.
That's a funny thing about some of those marketing techniques, like, right? It's so attention grabbing and like people come and they'll check it out, but nobody knows what it is you're selling or doing.
Yeah. No, network, you never know the connection that you make, how it may not benefit you at that time, but it could benefit you later on, or it could benefit somebody else that is near and dear to you. And so you see my Amen Thompson bobblehead, right? So, short story, a couple years ago,
Is
and
that the
look,
same
Sean's
one,
got
Sean?
his. Yeah. So,
Yeah, Adrian hooked me up.
yeah, so a couple years ago during the NBA draft, we picked a man and right? The Houston Rockets picked a man and the Pistons got his brother. And so, a really good friend of mine, shout out to Dolores Townley. I know she'll be hearing this later. She invited me to the draft party. And so I'm like, this is really good. I said, you know what? You should have a twin night. She's like, oh my God, that's a great idea. And she does group sales for the Rockets. And so, um, so she, went back to her team and she says, I have a great idea. She goes, we're going to do a twin night. And they're like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And so the first time the Pistons came down to play the Rockets was New Year's Day. And so they had a whole twin, they had a twin, I have to show you, I'll send a link to you, Sean. It's crazy. So they had a whole thing. They had twins and triplets show up. They had a twin thing during halftime and they had bobbleheads of both twins that were given out. And so she's like, she told me, yeah, it was a great success. Everybody liked it. And so her industry of, sports and my industry of manufacturing would not intersect. There's no reason why she and I would connect. But since that time, we have connected. We've become good friends. Last year at our SMTA Expo, we had, a lot of our guests were given tickets to go to the game later on that day. And we got to go on court and high five the players.
Wow.
She's hosted, we talked about Cup of Joey. We've had Cup of Joey events there. I help out the local Veteran Chamber of Commerce. We've had events there too. And so, and then this past March, my manager, who is in Lithuania, he came to visit. And so we're driving around Houston visiting people, and we had some spare time, and we had a meeting downtown Houston, and the Toyota Center is downtown Houston. And so I text my friend Dolores and said, hey, I said, I'm with my boss, and we have about a couple hours to spare. You work downtown. Where should I take him? And she's like, well, come by here. And so, a little known fact, Lithuania basketball is huge. It's huge there. Not soccer. It's basketball. So we pulled up and, she was waiting for us at the door and she had a swag bag. He got like a cap and a shirt and a bobblehead. I was like, man, you hooked him up. And so he was like, oh man, wait till I go back, show everybody all my NBA stuff. And she's like, well, have you ever been to an NBA game? He's like, no. He's like, well, there's one tonight. You want to come? And he looked at me like, we can do that? I guess, sure. So, and he's like, yeah, I've got 2 tickets for you. And I didn't know, I mean, this was totally unplanned. And so, so he went back to his hotel and he freshened up. I went back home and we met down there. And by the time we got there, our seats had been, she goes, hey, I got a surprise for you. I got your seats upgraded to a suite level. And so we weren't all crunched up in the crowd. We had perfect seats and like he enjoyed it. And so, that really, that really meant a lot to me. And she did it not because she was expecting anything in return, but she was doing it because she's a friend of mine. And so ironically, I posted on LinkedIn my day with my boss, Alexander, and I posted a picture of the game. Well, some people saw the picture and they're like, hey, how'd you get those tickets? Or I said, well, I said, with Dolores. And so before you know it, there was a couple of people wanting to know how they can get those tickets. And so for her, even though it was not a marketing or a sales ploy, it was just a friend helping a friend. The end result was she got some leads by offering my boss 2 tickets to the game.
I have had to hide this from my 10-month-old daughter for since Automate Detroit, and because it was sitting on in the basement, right? Because I wanted to keep it where we do the recording, and then I went over there to grab a pop off the table, and it went like this, and you could just see her eyes go like this, and then she's trying to climb the table to get up on it and try to grab it. So I'm gonna let her play with it now. So I don't know if it'll have a head tomorrow, but she's been eyeing that thing. I can just tell.
That's funny.
You can update the audience every recording as to how many body parts have survived.
We got a Maglio or Dornia's one, and she's just been playing around with that one, but it's a little bit bigger head, so I worry about this guy's head. But you never know. You never know.
We've talked a lot about LinkedIn, and that's one of the things you said that kind of struck me was that you're now one of the people who's answering the questions for others, right? Because that's kind of a lot of the coolest networking we've done and friendships that we've made, at least I can speak for myself, is some of the old hats who have been doing this for a really long time and are eager to share their knowledge with a younger generation who are happy to absorb it. And so I know that personally, I'm grateful to people like yourself with 25 years of experience who aren't just harboring that knowledge for themselves, but are willing to share it and advance the industry as a whole. And that's kind of grateful to you coming on here and sharing some of your knowledge here too, because that's a big point of this venture, is to be able to talk about how to advance the industry and make all of us smarter along the way. What would you say might be like, is there any particular area along the SMT line that you have more expertise with than others? Or are you pretty well versed across all the different like screen printing and placement and reflow and everything?
Yeah. So, no, years ago when I was at Schlumberger, I was actually the first engineer in oil and gas to get that SMT certification from the SMTA. But it's been so I know the process, and I know the roadblocks and the advances been over the years. But when it comes to circuit board manufacturing, what I really gravitated to was ESD programs. So within the oil and gas industry, there was this false sense of, well, our electronics are in these big old bulks of, drilling tools. We don't have to worry about static electricity. And so, but I attended some classes, and I started to, just because I had at the time I was in charge of a prototype lab, and I would have engineers show up with their circuit boards like a taco, holding the board inside of an ESD bag. And my technicians are like, Adrian, they're walking across campus, they're walking across the carpet, and they're bringing these boards for us to do rework. And there's no telling if there's damage already. So I went to my boss, and luckily he stood behind me. He goes, Adrian, he goes, if you want to create a procedure or a process or standards, go right ahead. I said, okay. So the first thing I did is I put a sign on the prototype lab that no boards were accepted if they were not carried in an ESD bag. And I caught a lot of flack for that. However, one of my mentors, the guy I was telling you earlier, Rick Etchels, he backed me up. And this guy was known not only within Schlumberger, but within the oil and gas industry as somebody who knew what he was talking about. He says, Adrian, he goes, go and do, he goes, you're onto something, do this. And so I started to create a program. And for about 7 or 8 years, I was the ESD subject matter expert for the entire company worldwide. So I had to set up programs. I had to set up training. At one time, one of the upper managers wanted me to travel around the world doing classes. I'm like, no. There's a lot more efficient way to do this. And so we created some video-based training. And when I left Schlumberger in 2015, 10 years ago, nobody else took over that job. And about 8 months ago, a guy on LinkedIn who works at Schlumberger called me, or SLB. He says, hey, I need your help. I was like, well, yeah. He goes, that ESD program that you wrote, he says, I need to bump the revision. I said, oh, absolutely. I said, there's been some advances. Now there's, a lot more things we can rely on. I said, well, what rev is it on now? And he's like, well, it's that Rev G. I'm like, dude, it was Rev G when I left. Why is it still 10 years? He's like, well, he goes, it's kind of been good for us. I'm like, well, thanks, but guys, you need to, get on the ball. And he's like, well, how can we hire you to? I'm like, no, dude, don't worry about hiring me. I said, let me come in there. I'll review the document with you, tell you what's been done since 2015, and just let people know that I'm here for them, and I can, I'm still in the business. And so we did that, and so now, again, paying forward, just being a solid person, sharing the knowledge just for the sake of sharing the knowledge. And you never know how it comes back. And sure enough, now, some of those people that I used to work with at Schlumberger, they are now coming on board as customers.
Well,
So,
ESD, like that's kind of like a black art of a lot of people don't even respect it, right? You might have
right.
people because one, it's going to be extremely hard, if even possible at all, to trace any damage back to an ESD event, right? Yeah. So it's, it happens, but when did it happen? How did it happen? Right. These things are hard to know for sure. But
that's exactly right.
but if it'd be so much easier to get everybody on board if, like, when a discharge happened, you'd see like a visible spark, and now the circuit board smokes, and you're like, oh crap, there goes another one. Throw it away, ESD problem. But it doesn't happen that way, right? You won't know. It'll just be weakened. It'll fail in the field sooner than it should or would otherwise, right? Like
the silent killer.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Our aha moment happened when I created this procedure for an ESD program, an internal ESD program. And so I was told by my boss, to present it to several departments there at our campus. So one of the guys, before I did that, he goes, "Hey," he goes, I got some money left in my annual budget." He goes, "I want to volunteer to be a guinea pig for your program." I said, "Okay." He says, "So just tell me what I need to buy, and then come and train our people, and we'll do it, and then we'll see how it, like, again, it's hard to test or hard to determine failures." So so I think we spent I don't know, maybe $8,000 or so on equipment, wrist straps and mats and uh, uh, continuous monitor systems, etc. And so I said, okay, let's watch what's going on. If you have any questions, I'll come down. Did it for about a month, maybe 6 weeks, and so and then 2 months later, I had to do this presentation, and so I go in front of these department heads. I said, well, here's the new ESD procedure. I'm like, oh man, another procedure. I've got it's a waste of time. Blah, blah. So look, I said, I'm not telling you have to do it. I'm just telling you that I think it's a good idea to do it. There's nothing, I don't have, you are several pay grades above me. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And they're arguing back and forth. And my mentor, Rick's like, well, no, you should do it. Like, well, no, go back and forth, back and forth. So this one guy who was my guinea pig, he's like, can I say something? Like, yeah, go ahead. Well, last month I asked Adrian if I could be his guinea pig, and at the time, a circuit board for his drilling tools were $2,000 each because it's not there's a lot of hand soldering, a lot of through hole components, conformal coating, it's a lot of work done to it. So he says, I usually spend about uh, $20,000 per month on my circuit boards. And he said, and for the past 6 months, we've been having failures and we're troubleshooting and we can figure out most of them. He says, damn it, at least once a month, he says, I've got 4 boards that I can't figure out. I send them back to the supplier and they can't figure it out either because the failure comes and goes. He says, so we end up scrapping them. He says, so that's $8,000 of scrap per month. And he said, a couple months ago, I put in a program, an ESD program that Adrian designed, and now we have failures, but that $8,000 of failures has gone away. He says, and he goes, I can't tell you why. I don't know why, but all I know is that we started the ESD program that Adrian initiated, and now those failures that we have that are unknown sources have gone away. And they're like, well, how much did you spend on his program? He says, I spent 8,000. He says, so that very first month, he says, my ROI, because I already got it back. He says, that money I invested. And so that's all they needed to hear. And so immediately they all decide to do the same thing. And so, again, like you said, it's hard to prove, these latent failures, but it happens. And then as that program took off, I was given more and more privileges as far as, one of the things that Schlumberger is really good at is safety training. And so anytime there's an accident, everything is documented. So they have different levels of accident reporting, and catastrophic, which is the highest one, would be considered somebody who a multi-million-dollar accident or a loss of life. And so there was one report that I had access to where a field worker was out in the field. It was cold, so the humidity level was low. He was wearing PPE, and that material was man-made. So as he's walking, it's generated a lot of electricity. The tool that he was working on is called a perforation tool, and basically it has bullets in the tube that are signaled by a radio signal. And those bullets slit into the ground to make the holes for the oil and gas to come into the main line. So this poor guy, cold weather, so it's dry, PPE, which is not cotton based, walks over to this tool, sag is on his hand. He touches the tool and discharges the perforation bullets, and he died. And so they determined that the reason for his death was the discharge of static. And so there was 2 things they had to do. One, they had to go back and redesign the circuitry to allow like a bleeder resistor to ground on that input, and also start implementing some ESD programs for the workers, like again at the gas station, to tell before you pump, touch the pump so you won't have any electricity on you or static electricity. So that was a real eye opener for the company. And as word got around, I ended up advising our 3 contract manufacturers on their ESD program and was able to get them certified to E2020.
See, it's so weird for me though. It's like I visit my customers as much as I can. I'll be honest with you. I got 2 customers that have, and I'm not lying about this, 70s shag carpeting, right?
Oh, jeez.
And they are literally opening the ESD bags and
No.
just walking around this 70, and they got their hands all over it. And I'm like, I mean, I put in it's my ESD floor is very expensive, right? And I use the epoxy, and we go through great lengths to try to make sure the ESD is not in our shop affecting the board. And then I get to there, and I'm not gonna lie, it's disheartening, right? And then and I see that back, and I'm like, well, if I get an RMA, I mean, how would I even say to that, right? Like,
Right.
Thankfully I don't, but it's just I see things like that, or I'll get like the other day, this one customer, we built the boards, and then they said, oh, we want to swap out this part for this part, and they're like, we're gonna ship the boards back to you, and then we get them back, and then like the way they even just package this stuff up, it was just like they just we wrap it in a nice big pink bubble wrap, and then we got each one has its own sleeve. I mean, these are huge cans we are soldering on here, so they're like this tall. They literally just threw them in a box and no bubble wrap, no nothing. They just sent them, and it's just like we look at it as like a piece of art, right? And then for somebody else, it's just a commodity. But that type of stuff's very disheartening to me.
Yeah, sometimes when you're in sales, part of the job is educating your customer. And now that I said that, I've always been of the mindset that whoever received whatever work or material I did, that's my customer. So whether it's an internal customer or an external, it's always like, okay, well, I want to be able to do my best for the next person down the line who I consider my customer. And then sometimes you have to very gently explain to the customer, hey, I put my heart and soul into this product right here, and now you're just going to jack it around. It's kind of frustrating.
It's gonna be a hard sell because let's be honest, like they still had the wood paneling from like when I was a kid up on their walls, right? So like if they're not willing to upgrade that, you know what I'm saying, or the carpet in 50 years, I doubt I'll be able to say like, hey, spend 10 grand on the ESD flooring. And
Hey, wood's great for ESD though.
Right.
Was it real wood paneling, that stuff that we had like in the basements as a kid?
I don't know. My grandma's house had that all down the hallway. I can see it
right
now as you say it. It's coming back to me.
Yeah, well, I always tell people when it comes to ESD, and so you think about, our this creation, this planet that we live on, everything wants to be at neutral. That's why we have lightning strikes, because there's an imbalance of charge in the air. And so, I've actually have done, when I volunteer at schools, I will have, I would do demonstrations for ESD and kind of explain to them, all about neutrality, and, talk about, just being at rest. And so you'll take on a different conversation sometimes.
You guys have any other questions for our guest?
Oh, I have a question. I already told Shonda. So, I mean,
I was going to try to sound smart. I didn't.
So I've worked for my father, like I said, when he was at GE. It was kind of funny. I come home from high school or from college, and he's like, "Hey son, guess what I got you?" I come home from spring break or Christmas break or summer break. Son, guess what I got you? I was like, "A car? No, I got you a job." I'm like, Dad, So I've worked with him, but working, on the job trainings, I can't even, stress how important that is. So I've worked with my father, and so Sean and I have talked about this a little bit. So my father was a deacon in the Catholic Church, and my mom was a director of religious education. And so on Sundays, we were church orphans. We spend all day, all Sunday at church, helping out. So I worked with my dad on the 9 to 5. I also worked as a volunteer teacher for my mother. So I know what it's like to work for my parents. So I've always wanted to. So your grandfather started the company.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that? I mean, so you've grown up so how is that? How does that feel? I mean, to me, I'm super envious, but I'm also kind of like, I couldn't work with my brothers and sisters. I could work with maybe one sister and maybe probably work with my dad. My brothers would drive me up the wall.
I don't know. I just always thought it was going to be my destiny, I remember being a kid in kindergarten, and they said like draw a picture, and I drew a picture of like my dad and I going to work because I always wanted to go to work with him, and I always enjoyed being at the factory. Unfortunately, though, I took like a different route in high school because they were teaching me things about Romulus clouds or cumulus clouds, whatever they are, and all this stuff. And I'm like, teach me how to sell a circuit board. Teach me how to manufacture a circuit. What do I care about this stuff for, right? Worms and all that other, and Bunsen burners, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, so I didn't take school seriously, right? So I kind of hindered myself with my choices afterwards, right? And my dad never wanted me to actually work and I never understood why until one day I was out on in the plating line and our nitric tank got over time it gets sludged out, all the copper and tin drops to the bottom. So there's no other way to do it. You have to we jimmy rigged this plastic, I'll call it like a spade almost. And you'd have to go down in this tank and rip up the sludge, and then you got to pick it over and put it onto this cart, like for disposal. And then, I was doing that and I was like lazy. It was like a day and a half process. And the second day I was like, I'm not putting these boots on. These boots are annoying, right? Dad, put the boots on, put the boots on, put the boots. And then I didn't. And then, I got nitric inside my boot. And then my toe, I'm not going to lie, was blue for 3 months. I'm not lying. I thought for sure I'm never getting color back in this thing. It's gone. I'm not going to go to the doctor because I'm scared, right? And I just kept it inside. But it was at that moment when I pulled that sock off and my foot stayed blue for a couple of days. I realized this is why he didn't want me to work here for $12 an hour, right? It just, it made sense. I don't know, just I always had
Well, I
a
mean, he
passion
could have
behind it.
paid you more.
Probably. So my dad, my dad's a character, right? He's a good guy. Him and I, what I like about my dad and I is we can yell at the top of our lungs. We can swear at each other. We can call each other names and,
I believe it.
get
All of
into
that.
I mean, I won't fist fight with him because he knows jujitsu and he's a black,
Destroy
black belt.
you.
He'll just,
I
yeah,
imagine you guys it would have been like, what was that? Like American Chopper
Orange
with
County
Paulie and
choppers.
Paulie
Yeah.
Senior or whatever. That
Throwing
the
barrel
circuit.
wrenches at each other.
You
yeah.
guys would be
Not,
the circuit board version of that.
It would not, yeah, and so I knew I couldn't beat him up physically, right? So, but he allows me, and I allow him to vent, and it's probably not the most constructive way to communicate. If like a therapist seen it, right? They'd be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" But we kind of blow up, and then and then we also
I
have that
said that
balance,
Detroit.
yin and yang, right? So usually when I'm going crazy, he's on the calm side, and then when he's going crazy, I'm the calm one. I don't know. At least
Thank goodness.
with that too, I don't know. How do you explain it, Elias? I don't know.
I think it's kind of hard to explain because it's just so normal for us, right? We've been in these situations for how many years?
Both
Yeah,
of us,
I
20 years this year.
20 years been working with our fathers, and I think it's part of the reason why Sean and I got along so well in the beginning, because there's just certain things and certain reactions that you could almost telegraph, between the kind of son and father business dynamic. And
Yeah.
we'll just complete each other's sentences sometimes with hey, this happened, and you'll never believe what my dad said. I'm like, no, I know exactly what he said because I've heard it the same way. So it's funny, but it's one
Well,
of those things
especially
that has its ups and downs. But in the long run, I wouldn't trade it. I don't think you would either, Sean. At least you wouldn't admit to
no,
it on camera.
no, he's a good guy. Yeah, I'll admit it. But especially today's day and age of selling, Adrian is a perfect example. My dad, he's obsessed with the idea of when you're on the podcast, talk about KNF, right? When you're doing SMTA, right? Put a big banner at KNF. I'm like, Dad, that's not how you sell anymore. It doesn't work like that. That's not. Trust me, they'll know me from this, and then they'll look at my company, and if they want to buy from me,
Right.
they'll engage some way. Otherwise, I'm kind of just chasing after waterfalls. It felt like for a long time, but you know what I'm saying, Elias?
Oh yeah. It's that generational gap, right? And all these principles and techniques, and the hard work that went behind them were so applicable at that time. But like anything else, it evolves. But yeah, it's kind of funny. And then when you get those moments where something that you're doing now, a contemporary technique for social marketing or whatever it is you want to call it, and then Dad sees that, wow, it's actually kind of working. And then you get that attaboy, but somehow, some
I
way,
was
it
about
was
to
their
ask you,
idea in the end.
do your dads give you an attaboy every now and then, or like, yeah, that's my son? Do you get that's my dad?
When I go to the bar, my dad's bar, all of his friends tell me, your dad's so proud of you. Your dad's so proud of you. There was a week a couple months ago where he started saying I love you, and I'm proud of you. And I was like, what's going on with this guy, right?
What's wrong, Dad?
So it's very rare. I was extremely alarmed of what's going on. I was like, right, but yeah, it's rare. I don't know about what about for you?
Yeah, kind of same deal. I'll hear it. I'll hear it from others. Like your dad said this about you. I know your dad's proud of what you're doing, but maybe the direct lines it's just not how our relationship's ever been. It's kind of more the machismo part about it, but I know it, and yeah, I mean I've learned so many things from my pops, and even some of the stuff, and that I say, oh, I'll never do that, or I'll never say that, and then next thing you know, it's like crap, I'm turning into my dad. But that's not a
Yeah.
bad thing.
Yeah, that's it. My growing up doing stuff. My dad's way of saying he loved you was like, be careful. You, yeah, I'm just going, be careful. Okay. It wasn't until, I got older and became a father myself. Like, oh, now I get it, and so, but yeah, my dad passed away 2 years ago, and the last 9 years of his life, he suffered from a stroke and was partially paralyzed. And so, but I had so much fun with him those 9 years because, the roles were reversed, and we would laugh about the stupidest stuff. And so, I remember one time, I was there, and so my mom was his primary caregiver, but we had people who would come help her. But on the weekends, I'm one of six. And there's three boys. We're the Mexican Brady Bunch. There was three boys, three girls, and so us three boys would take turns, helping my dad. I mean, like going to the restroom, giving him a shower, helping him shave, stuff like that. So uh, one Saturday it was my turn, and so I was giving my dad a shower, and he's like, it's really embarrassing. I'm like, why, Dad? He goes, because you're giving me. I said, Dad, you took care of me. You took care of all of us. It's our turn to take care of you. I said, so, I will honor your modesty. I will help as much as I can. I said, but I'm sorry. It's just certain things are gonna happen. Okay. I see. And so we're just talking. I said, Dad, Mom says that when I was a baby, I was the firstborn and used to help change diapers. He's like, yeah, I helped change them. I changed your diapers, and well, Dad, there wasn't Pampers back then, were there? He goes, no, we used cloth diapers and pins. I said, yeah. I said, Mom used to say that I used to cry because you would push that pin and you would hit me on my hips. Yeah, mijo, sometimes I did that. I said, well, you know what? Paybacks are a mother, Dad.
Oh,
And so I
nice.
took out. He's yelling from the shower. Come get your son. Gloria, come here. And he's like, what's going on there? And we're laughing. I was like, nah, don't. Well, I was just, and he's laughing. And so, uh, he was laughing so hard, he'd start choking. Oh, I don't want your father dying in the shower from him laughing at you too loud, too hard. But yeah, that whole father-son dynamic, like I said, when you get a chance to, I was out of the three boys, I was the only one who got a chance to work with my dad. And I learned a lot working with him because I got to see him, um, knowing his background of where he came from, growing up speaking only Spanish, didn't start elementary school till he was like 7 or 8 years old, quitting junior high, going into the service, he didn't get his GED until I was like a junior in college, and so by that time he already, rose the ranks. And so I learned a lot from from him, working with him, and then taking care of him the last 9 years of life. I learned a lot from him as well. So yeah, I can appreciate y'all's guys' stories of your dads.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation for everything from networking to, SMT processes and a little bit of real life stuff. So thank you so much for being on with us, Adrian, and really enjoyed talking to you. Appreciate you being on. So, if people want to follow your work or get in touch with you and kind of get in on the networking game, how do they find you? How do they get in contact?
So LinkedIn, Adrian J. Leal in Houston, Texas. Like I said, I also volunteer with besides my 9 to 5 with Teltonica. I have the luxury of doing some volunteering work after hours with Cup of Joey. Real quick, the reason why we call it Cup of Joey, coffee is called a cup of Joe, right? Well, at Cup of Joey, we say it's a cup of coffee, and we don't say what we do, we say why we do it. So when we network, that's another thing too. A little tidbit of information is like, when you network, don't go out there just passing out business cards, hoping somebody get to know the person, find out what their passion is. One of my co-volunteer ambassadors for Cup of Joey, Ryan Hill, he and I knew each other for 2 years, and one day we're sitting there, like, Brian, what do you do for a living? Shit, I was going to ask you the same question, Adrian. We never knew, it's just that we had the same passion, but our careers were, and so we're like, I need to send business your way. I said, me too. So yeah, when you network, don't ask the what, ask the why, and those relationships seem to last longer.
That's awesome. That's good advice. Well, thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed what you heard here, like and subscribe. Follow us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. That's not distracting. We also want to remind everybody, sign up for SMTAI in October, the 19th through the 23rd at the Rosemont Convention Center. We will be there recording
I'll be there too.
episodes of the podcast. Adrian will be there. Who knows? Maybe he'll even record with us in person. So encourage you guys to sign up and get to it. Great networking event. And thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode.